Okay, you guys. The crickets meet up with the groundhog. What? What's up with this? I figured I'd let Puxatawny Phil let you know that RealLibertyMedia.com had its yearly server bills come up and all this other stuff we use to provide for you. And last Friday I found out, after Puxatawny Phil said so, we didn't have enough people to come to donate. I thought that would be enough. So I don't know, maybe you crickets and you Mr. Phil over there, you guys are all getting together and it's not going to work out. We need to support the voices of the people that are bringing the information to help you all out, whether or not you agree with it, whether or not you can do anything with it, whether or not you choose to. So Listen to Freakers Ball found out we're a little bit short on the donations for this year. We do this once a year, make the request. It goes about a month, I guess. Just a few of our broadcasts mention it. I mentioned it once. Maybe I should have mentioned it last week. Really would appreciate anybody dropping whatever they can. If all the people that listen to me on all the places that we go out, whether that's BitChute, Minds.com, and thank you all, everyone over there. If I had in Cowboy Tech, I think I might have missed your donation of points quite a few weeks ago. I've been here 2017. Thank you very much for all your bonuses. I just haven't had a chance to get over and do much on those sites besides post. Your normalization of ignorance, your YouTube remirroring. Thank you very much for all that going on. All that is out there. If we could just get even $1, go to RealLibertyMedia.com and get $1 from everybody that listens, the server bills get paid. And it happens once. Now I'm understanding, Rob Works is saying the groundhogs ate the crickets. Well, wow. What are we going to do with that? Now we don't have a way to come back. We'll have to wait for the, well, never mind. So we got to ask one more time at least. Grimner came out of his pocket this time, just like Bo Diddy did on freedomsnetwork.com. I never really found out what happened to that. Did enough money go there to keep those servers going? And it's just a few people supporting this. I would like to think that we can support ourselves, and we don't have to rely on so many people. In fact, Grimner is not only putting it coming out of his pocket, he's doing all the work to keep it up, keep all that going. And offers me a place to be that makes it nice and simple for me to show up every Sunday and do this. And then that gets that ever important file, the podcast, you want to call it broadcast, the blogcaster I use, the file for this. And that gets out to everyone else. And then we have other people that come in and help. And it's all volunteer. I don't ask a dime for this. I mean, it's not that we can't use it behind a woodshed, but it's not the point. And again, so for whatever grief I might get about what I know it doesn't work or whatever the heck you think that I'm doing because you don't really understand what I'm doing or what I'm talking about, that's okay. I know beyond that. And I know that those of you that have heard and do, as I've explained and suggested, you go a lot farther quicker, don't you? And I'm not asking you in particular that have taken benefit. I'm asking anybody who understands that this broadcast goes out because there's other people that are sacrificing themselves as well. I really believe that I don't think a buck is too much to ask if we go down to $1. And I certainly thank all those that generously already, without more, was just reminded or even originated their donations. And so this is, I guess, behind the woodshed. I'm giving you some lashings on that. I thought really that we would just wrap that up pretty quick. I also know the reality. So those that you can, don't feel guilty if you can't. I mean, I'd be the one that couldn't actually. So I throw in my part here, I suppose. And so we all do. I'm hoping we're all doing what we can without too much impetus. And I don't know all the ways you can get to donate. I know that there's some easy ways on the website, reallibertymedia.com. Just go there. And this would go for any of your networks. Just figure out a way to get donations sent. There's all kinds of different virtual currencies. I kind of tagged on to the Doge of War, the Dogecoin. It's not doing much in the cryptocurrency thing world, but it's still there. And it's my little tongue-in-cheek joke about that, but it's still a virtual currency way, if you have those, to transfer some value to Grimner, who's all into that and may be able to do those exchanges. But you have the direct donations as well. We can, however you guys all do that. I don't do any of that because I don't have any bank accounts in that. So that's, I learned about stepping back a little too soon, maybe. Before all this stuff, I realized I wasn't so smart as to see the future of how that would work when you're outside that system. When some of it needs to be inside in order to make it all work for you. So I'm a little bit handicapped in that regard, but a lot of you are not. This is why I keep telling you about, watch out of this electronic world that they've got us plugged into, they got you plugging yourself into. Anyway, with the double-edged sword that it is, we grab the handle. To do that, it's going to cost a few dollars. Please donate what you can. I really was kind of surprised. I kind of go on, like I've been told at the district, ideas that I come up with that we need to do in the law side of all this, and I was making comment about, I'm not so sure about the cost of this and how that would work, and it was a unanimous, don't worry about the money. That's what we're talking about here. I don't have, and I literally took the wise counsel, backed off of whatever it cost, and whatever ideas I have to come up with, I would come up with, and the assembly would make the decision on whether they wanted to move forward. And the money was really kind of an irrelevant point. It's just the means to the end. So we have a few bucks. If I remember hearing right, it's about $150 left that Grimner came out of his pocket on top of all the work he does. If we can get a few of you all, wherever you hear this broadcast, just to find reallibertymedia.com and drop a buck. Even those FRNs work. And like I said, I don't get too freaked out about all that stuff. You just have to know you just need to know where to place all that. So involve yourself where you can, but don't handicap yourself and your mind about getting into all that. As I've said, if you are one with the things the government issued, you might actually be in a more protected spot than I find myself now, and I've had to do other things to adjust. And that's driven me to do other and more, I guess, more fantastical things in most people's minds. They don't understand how I'm going about what I'm saying. People don't really truly understand what I'm saying. They think they know and they don't. And it's just what the fact is. I ran across 3 or 4 evidence, again, it's these last few weeks. Maybe it's me shifting and I didn't notice a shift in me, but now I'm just seeing more and more people who don't understand. They think they got it. They think they're being told right stuff, and they don't really understand a thing that's going on. And that's a serious problem. And they don't understand the terrain that they're in, as I keep talking about. I'm so fortified every time that happens to show you. I reanalyze every time I get an obstruction of somebody getting in their own way. I rethink about what I've been doing, and I can't tell you I can't think of anything I would change at this point over all this time. And anyway, going back to the donations, thank you for those that have. Please consider a lot. I don't beg about it. This is about as close as I'm going to get to begging you for helping Grimner keep the servers up and all the services you don't know about behind the scenes that go on to keep this thing going. And if you can, again, I'd be on the wrong side of that one myself. So thank you very much. Anyway, thank you for listening and passing the broadcast out. I can't thank you enough to get the word out. I don't know what people are going to do with it. I can't know if people are going to, it seems to resonate with quite a few people. It just doesn't move past that in a lot of places, but that's okay. I realize that's just going to take a matter of time and reorientation. You have to I'm telling you folks, you have to reorient out of what you even thought you knew. All the perspectives I've seen people gain is really an incorrect approach. And I wish I could tell you about what I have to deal with during the week, not have to deal with. I choose certain cases to help people try to understand what their problem is and to go through that, to deprogram what they thought they knew. And again, it's not my opinion in deprogramming someone and what they think that they're doing. I can tell you right where you need to go in order you can see yourself how it's not going the way you think it was, and you better be careful about trying to push your will on something you have no power to change. And so there's a different thought process that goes on and on. As I say, as I get through this, I'm going to try and show you something that it actually occurred to me again. It kind of proves out some of the stuff that we're up against. And you understand your government comes at you in the 3 branches of government they talk to you about. That's the way they come at you. There's coming at you at least 3 directions. And so that's the society you live in. And everyone wants to deny that. I think you're being a fool. And I guess I have to say I think you're being a fool because that's the way I'm thinking about it. But I think generally you would find that if you understood what the condition was, you would consider yourself the fool. to continue or not, actually continue and not doing it right, or to not do anything and not do anything right. It still ends up being the same end for all of us. So, BTW, broadcaster reference, BTW RLM 254, I believe, and we can move on. Thank you again for the donations. Anybody else can, please drop I want to say a dime, but it's kind of, remember, it's been, the FRN's been devalued, so you got to multiply that by 10, remember, so drop a buck. I did say buck, remember? So we don't care how it works as long as it's still spendable. That's the big open joke. What you use to get through the world in this world is whatever people will accept. And that's the interesting joke about the cryptocurrency. It'll survive, but it'll survive only because it moved and evolved to go into a place where it actually could be defended by people who understood how to do that. And I'm hoping that those people will listen to what I'm saying, because I'm giving you the clues in other places on how you'll do that. And I reference those periodically. Again, this there's no script here that can be written that can't be defeated. If I was asked before, I was trying to figure out who was asking me right now, but somebody asked me, like when writing a book, and can you tell me this? Well, if we did that, if I pulled that together, and I put it out there, and we were to agree that we could move this thing through, as soon as the other side that wants to oppose you sees that game plan, they can defeat it. They actually can't defeat it, but what they can do is they can throw a bunch of dust in your face and dust in the face of the thing that you're trying to use as the mechanism. And so part of this is a real problem with communicating information. If I make a plan for you, anybody who sees that who's in the system will understand how to get in your way. Make it a delay, if nothing else, and that delay can last longer than you. And so as I tell you, I hate to just even discuss the things that's going on, because I don't want to circumvent someone else's authority. Again, surprise, a counterattack and surprise and a counterattack is really part of the key here. Coming in ways they haven't even thought about, that sit right there to come, that no one understands is a tool to do so in the system. Again, we wouldn't even be talking if there weren't people in the world who want to put some kind of authority on their shoulder, on their chest, as a medallion in their pocket, as some license they don't show you, some hat they wear that has some authority to come and harm you. If those people didn't exist, I wouldn't probably be here to talk to you. And you wouldn't maybe be listening. We'd be off doing what we want to do. We'd be living in the peace that was promised within the context of our property, that those that are out in the system anymore want to destroy in you. And if they're going to destroy the property that you can tangibly touch with your property, then you don't have a property that you can protect. And I guess that thought crossed my mind as I was coming into the broadcast. For everybody that's out there that listens to me, that doesn't start to assert them things, find that wrong you want to make right, and make it something that you understand is really about you, protecting you ultimately, understanding the property that you is. You are just barking up a tree. You're just making a noise. You're not capable. You don't, and if you're not capable of protecting yourself, you have no standing to whine. And I would say stop it. Stop wasting everybody's time. You want to talk about crickets? We'd have a desolate sounding place real quick if actually everyone was honest about that. And you'd have to listen to that silence in yourself about, well, yeah, I can't protect myself. I can pretend I can protect myself. I can say that the one attacking me is a criminal. But when Genghis Khan and his horde attacks you, when they come and swat you, you better have some understanding of certain things. Look very carefully. There's anomalies. Not everyone dies. Not everyone gets taken down. Maybe they're not all of a sudden not there when it's time, when they could see something happening. I'm showing you how to do the records and make the records you need as they come beforehand, so that there's no there is a conscience that works in people. They're always looking. These people look for an immunity they can hide behind. I tell you, learn to take that away from them ahead of time and do it responsibly and do it nobly, whether they respond to that or not. But anyway, today we have some. So thank you very much, all the support these weeks and going on, whether it's for the broadcast or the network or the places like UCY.tv. Where we do the simulcasts and all that stuff. But today I wanted to lead off with some real dangerous things. I used to do the recalls, and I told you a long time ago they became so many that I could do a broadcast on recalls, and that wasn't what I was there to do. And I deferred you over to other places that would give you recalls. But there's a couple that are super serious that seem to kind of silently creep in, and not much news about it, a little bit. But I did want to talk to you about it. One is airbag danger. Ford and Mazda say don't drive these pickups at all. It ends up being their Ranger pickup. So the airbag at that company in Japan, the device that they made used a chemical that degrades, and that changes its explosive properties when it goes off to inflate the bag to be literally explosive. These trucks can kill you. They're saying don't drive them at all. So I'm just wondering whether or not you can put a blast shield over your steering wheel, maybe take it down to your dealer. There is supposed to be a fix on this for those of you that may have the truck or the type of truck that they're calling. I'll have a link in the blogcaster. That's all I want to tell you. Pay attention to this one. You can get it fixed. Anybody you love when you know, or even if you see someone, even your enemy, if you don't want them to die that way, maybe some other way, maybe in a ball of flame, not just a blast of metal in their face. And maybe you want to warn them to the future time when they can go off in a ball of flame. The thing is that this is a real dangerous thing. The company's saying don't drive these trucks. So this is a serious thing. Lots of people have died. So just want to warn you about that. There's another thing now where your little babies, your little pets that you have, not your goats, not your child, but the little fur babies and hair babies. We've got a problem with dog food here, and it's pretty. Apparently, the problem I'm seeing is it's a serious problem that is being fought and resisted by the company a bit. But I needed to talk to you about this because I don't understand why a euthanasia drug at all would be in a product processing plant for a dog food. Gravy Train, Old Boy, and other brands recalled for euthanasia drug. J.M. Schmucker Company has voluntarily withdrawn certain shipments of 27 different food products following the media reports of a phenobarbital contamination in some of the Gravy Train dog food. Well, it's more than that. It's kibbles and bits and some others. But at any rate, I just wanted to, those of you that feed your food, if you're really caring about your animals, I really don't know how you can consider this stuff that they have. You go look at what this stuff is, the ingredients that make this food. This is really low-level food anyway. I don't know why you'd be feeding your little babies there, your little pets, your family members, even though they're just property, folks. Don't get lost in that either. We take on this family this familyness with the pets that we have, but the legal system says it's just a thing, and it's a property, and it's just like that herd that they manage that they call you the human. It's all reduced down to that, and so don't think that you have much more to say than that part, but that they're willing to get, the government agency has said that there's some phenobarbital. Smuckers is saying it's not necessarily in all cases. I'm looking at the ingredients of the product and saying, why would you feed that to yourself anyway? Feed it to yourself. That's right. That's where we're going, folks. Why would you feed that to yourself anyway? Or your dog. But that's up decisions that you all make. My thought is if you stopped buying this nonsense food, that they'd stop doing that. We wouldn't worry about this phenobarbital. But what is this euthanasia contamination in a food processing center? Is my problem with how they do things and how they process foods. And now we got it to the point with the epigenetic changes. The food processing, you have to now have on your labels that you were these so-called foods are been manufactured or processed in buildings or by processes that may be contaminated by other certain foods like nuts and things like that. Why? Because we have these allergies that all of a sudden have popped up, as well as everything else we talked about. And I really do hope you appreciated what I was saying last week. When I suggested you go to see Title 50, I hope all of you went, although I don't know. You need to go Title 50 and see what that's about. This is in the law. They get to do this to all y'all. All this is nonsense, but it's all there for the bottom line. I keep telling you that. You need to see that black and white. It's not just my opinion. It's just not something you could go nod your head agreeably and then you move along. You need to really see there's this thing inside this system that we live in that's been allowed upon us that we necessarily need to know more than an opinion, because it needs to be addressed. And we get to see now what's this chemical doing in this the dog food factory, processing food factory. And, I'm telling you that's that may be in your food. That's how this thing works. You don't know what they're putting in this stuff. And so this brings up a whole other idea, about them being able to put together these processed things, and what might be the plan for that. Now, why would a nation allow for these chemicals and stuff to be in your food at all? But they do. And that's because it's like the Clean Water. I keep telling you about the Clean Water Act. It's all the same model and same plan. The Clean Water Act is not an act to clean water. It's real interesting. I say that and I think about all the people that now speak to it about it this way. They didn't say that before I started saying this, but that's okay. And I hope it's just not a rote discussion about this statement. The Clean Water Act is not an act to clean water. It's an act to be able to pollute so much, because government gives license, and license is the permission to do some sort of crime, but for that license. Permit, certification, registration. All right, so I just said registration. You want to register your gun. What was the crime about your gun? The arm, I would have to say. You're keeping bear arm. What's the crime about that? What's the commerce about that? None of us, I say none of us in general, none of even consider that this is what's going on around us. So government gives license to itself to get beyond prohibitions when in fact it has no authority to do so. And I see crickets everywhere. I see everyone arguing with me or arguing the wrong argument, thinking that their opinion's better than just going back to what the enemy is promising that they would follow. That's the only quickest way I know to get to this. But so these processing things are going on. Most of us certainly listen. I'm singing to the choir here. Most of us understand this processing is not really too keen, is it? So here was a study real quickly. Here, processed foods are driving up rates of cancer. Well, we just heard that they'll put phenobarbital in dog food. What do you think, folks? But here we are. Processed foods are driving up rates of cancer. How do I tell you to address the world? It's an ongoing court case. You better take the evidence as you find it so you can protect yourself down the road when you're forced to do certain things. And that is coming in this processed food thing, as we're starting to see the government wanting to confine everybody into its products or the products of its corporations. Eating processed food significantly raises the risk of cancer, experts warned last night. Well, I guess eating that dog food will significantly raise the risk of death. So I guess cancer would be an interesting diversion, wouldn't it? At least it'd give you a couple months. Let's say they said that the disease now was claiming more lives because of the popularity of ready meals, sugary cereals, and fizzy drinks. Now, I won't go through the rest. You all know about that. They even have it's not just processed food. There's also ultra-processed foods, driving up cancer rates. Well, what did we talk last week? Driving up cancer rates. What did we talk last week? Driving up also suicidal things. I can go on all the neurological, whatever the heck the word is. Doesn't matter. We just understand that this is what's going on, not because we know. We now have the evidence, and if you want to continue to live in this society or watch your little ones grow up into this society, that this is okay because the government can give license to criminals to kill you just a little bit. Continue to be crickets. Continue to be groundhogs that eat crickets. And you climb out once a year to see your shadow and be afraid of it, I suppose. But remember, Puxatawny Phil said no matter whether I see my shadow or whether I don't, donate to RLM. RealLibertyMedia.com. Hit that donate button. Figure out how to get some money to the servers that keep what we're doing going. I'm going to do this one all day. Really disappointed that we didn't get that simple. It seemed like a simple amount of money. That's the price. What Grimner was asking for is the price of a lawsuit. Together, right now, we couldn't afford to sue to protect our property rights. If you can get that part, because the cost of justice is that high now. Notwithstanding the constitutions that you might read that said that there is not supposed to be a cost for justice. Think about the occupying force that changed that. When you kind of challenge that and they say, no, it's okay to charge you a fee before we give you anything. So, processed foods are driving up cancer rates. You can read the story. I'm not going to do that. You need to see this stuff yourself. You need to qualify these yourself. I'm pointing out that the evidence is here. We can collect it up. We can stick it in our bag of law. On the wrong, we need to be right. Even against us, when they start forcing stuff down our throat, we can say, well, that's why I don't eat processed food. Besides, it tastes pretty bad. I don't like eating the dog food in my regular food either. So, we have something here that's very important. In the news is the notice that they allow phenobarbital even in a processing center. Why? I'm telling you there's a whole lot of other stuff that they let in. And these are the little cracks that come up Again, the FDA would have never got involved if it was underneath a threshold. And that's partly what's cool about these thresholds. What the problem is they don't use the same thing they put on you for cautionary principle, the precautionary principle. They don't save it for you. They put it for the corporation, making the product and the bottom line transfer from you to them, to it. And then they exploit you as the human resource to be able to extract whatever they want to, but they have to get your consent. It's really a simple plan, and they got us wired, boy, big time. So processed foods are driving up cancer rates. You can let that pass or not, and part of that becomes a problem this week. All at the same time, when we hear about this story called this plan now, administrative plan for the United States Department of Agriculture through the Trump administration, the Blue Apron SNAP proposal, the SNAP proposal. This is your welfare now, your new stuff, with the EBI card, the credit card. You're not getting any money anyway here. This is the other joke behind all this. The new Blue Apron, quote, Blue Apron SNAP proposal showcases the worst of the Trump administration, was the opinion of the Washington Post. But in this case, I have to agree. This is the one guy that proposed this has no dignity in him over this problem of people not being able to get food. And here's my problem with it. The United States Department of Agriculture is the same department that has constricted logging in the western states and allowed it instead to burn by this forest fire policy. That had they gone back and just followed the law of improving harvest in the public land and no forest reserves, and this particularly the forest reserves is what the United States Department of Agriculture's Forest Service has jurisdiction over. If they go back and they would start to log the forest instead of watching it burn to nothing, to ash and destruction, they would be creating the jobs that would be moving people off of any welfare rolls and reducing the amount of money that they claim they're trying to save. When they do the Blue Apron, you get your food in a box, and it's going to be oh so nutritious. If you read through this story, it's pretty sickening what you see omitted. I tell you, watch the omissions. They don't talk about it going to be palatable. They talk about it's going to be nutritious by some bureau rats chart somewhere. And I don't know about if you've ever seen, like what they said, the government cheese. There's just something about those products that's not necessarily the same. However, they do come out of, and I do know, I worked at a cannery a long time ago. One cannery will do the processing for a bunch of different brands. And at that point, you start realizing how stupid the ridiculousness of this whole thing is to have this so-called private company making a box of food they're going to hand you equal to half of what they would give you in an EBT card, saying it was going to save money and you were going to have better guidance on your nutrition. Is an insult to people on its face. They're going to give you this processed food we just read is going to give you cancer. And if you get a recalled item in that food and you ate it and didn't get the message, it may kill you. And, I don't know about you, but I know most people that have a need of welfare and have lots of kids and mouths to feed. There's not much left. And that moms typically will make that stretch pretty far. That they don't want their offspring to have this confined meals ready to eat nonsense that's maybe it has different strategies going on. Why would you want, and have a bunch of little ones to drink milk, why would you want shelf-stable milk? And what is that? If it's not sterilized completely of anything. There would not be a drop of milk in a household of people who are needing the welfare and the kids to feed, to be worried about shelf-stable, is the kind of nonsense we start seeing with this. The indignity of having to go somewhere to ride. You're going to be forced to ride your bike in probably in order to get this box of food that has processed food that we now see the report is for cancer. That's why I'm tying this all together. At this point, I don't know what the better transmission system of all this stuff, as cheap as they could do it, that you do go to a Walmart in order, because their processing shipping system is much better than you now having to go down and pick up your stuff in a box. And I don't know about you, but I don't know of a family who would need the welfare because they can't go get their husbands and their wives or whoever can't go out in the forest and cut trees that are all burning up in the summer anyway, why they couldn't be working at very high level wage jobs there to do that, why they would have to be subjected to this box thing in the first place, or someone else's idea of what fresh is and nutritious and not actually be raw and organic or any of that stuff that you would do for yourself. Notwithstanding, anybody I know tries to, if you can't, you try to do for leftovers all at the same time, more efficient. What I also get out of this program is what they're doing here in this blue box type program, where you will receive food instead of receive cash, folks. The quote off the front, you don't receive the cash unless it's in the change coming back, and even then the EBT card will only charge out what you need to take. So there's no cash here. This is all a big setup. This whole thing has no actual purpose, except it does give people more processed food and refined bureaucrats trying to feed you their regurgitations. It's not based on any need. And so you are not going to be able to go in the future. They're going to take half of your stuff away, so they only half starve you. You're probably going to have to go down to a food bank, because they're not going to want to give you the stuff that you would do, and they're not going to feed you the way you've been accompanied and you've been accustomed to as you grew up in your culture. Remember, in diversity there is monoculture. There is no diversity. You're going to like your oatmeal. That's it. You're going to get that bowl of pottage that was given up because you didn't insist better. And these are people that would be to work, as far as looking at it through the logging side. These are people that would be working. They were working before. They're having to take these lesser jobs now, and now they get stuck in less than 29 hours a week. They need help too. And if we all sit back and don't show the absurdity of this whole process, our society starts to go down in other ways. And you don't want hungry people. That's one thing that I've told you before. They've managed this hunger thing. Now it looks like they're going to start to constrain. They're going to go to this is austerity, the start of austerity as well. That they didn't come out and start to open up logging to create more jobs before they start constraining the need in the food. If they would have needed to do it anyway, or if even plausible that they could do it, it has to show you this is a very terrible plan that Trump is going to, apparently agrees with. And so for all you Trumpsters, be careful on what you think is happening on the greater scheme of things. My view is the USDA needed to make every opportunity of employment ready to go first before they ever thought about looking at interfering with how people feed themselves. And then the other thing on top of all this, on top of it all, I realized, well, this administration wants to pay a public-private partnership in condition. And now this Blue Apron is not necessarily the company Blue Apron, but they're going to go like the style of it, but it ends up being they're going to have to get someone to do the private part of this that will be the food distributor. It occurs to me that they're agreeing that they've ripped everybody off because they're willing now, the government's willing to save money. They're willing to pay a private entity to do all this stuff that people have been doing for themselves and not got paid for. They're now willing to pay for the cost of the warehousing, the cost of the food preparation, and the cost of the transportation back and forth that they never paid to anybody before now. In other words, they've ripped every family off for the storage, the getting of the food, and the preparing of the food. They never paid anybody for that. They've ripped that value away. They stole it from people for all these years. If they go to this thing as well, is another indication to me this is not made to help you. It never has been, although it helps you. But remember, your fundamentals are driven by the decisions and the policies of the government. So as I show you this, if you can understand what I'm saying about this logging, yes, maybe a lot of people wouldn't be involved, but I can tell you out west where there is timber, there is hundreds of thousands of people that start to get employed that wouldn't be looking at all. In fact, they start buying things. They start going out they start developing the economy around providing even more jobs out there that are secondary and tertiary economies from raw materials production. And this is what I just want, again, okay. So this is a problem. You got processed foods. You know what's going to be in this. I don't care that they call about it's going to be nutritious. That nutrition's based on a false premise as well. But they're going to give you the food that's processed that we now find as a report for that shows it's cancerous or cancer-causing of some sort. And if you get your facts together, you can be a voice against this other style of oppression and destruction of a society of people. Yes, we're pretty ignorant generally, but you don't have to keep perpetuating that by remaining silent. And so, to move on, all kinds of stuff to talk about. I get lost in some of my thoughts. I'm talking to you, and all my thoughts are going 1,000 different places. I start wanting to talk about it all. Just don't have the time. And going on. Next tab. All ties together eventually if you pay attention, but not in the point, to my mind. You ties it together, and then you sit back and say how all-knowing you can see how comprehensive all the oppression is, and then you just sit there. It's not really going to help anybody, not even you. And you may be one of the higher level, maybe not giving it to RLM, Real Liberty Media. You're not giving it to Real Liberty Media, but you feel content in that you're in a status that you can avoid this for a long time, and it's not going to affect you. So I guess we can sit there and do that, but that's not going to be proper either. Again, hungry people. Well, you just go look around the world and look at Venezuela. Again, you folks you think you're all privileged folks in the United States where you think you're different than anywhere else. You really have to get a better eyeball on what's going on now. Behavioral abnormalities, another thing what they allow onto you, because it's the bottom dollar and then it says their controls and all that kind of stuff, they get to extract all kinds of things. But for those of you looking for some information, this is apparently a study that was done back in 2016. I just got a hold of it. Just to let you know it's out there. And because we were talking about the vaccines and all this thing, here's the HPV as a focus, but not really that as well. Remember I told you also that the adjuvants are the things that you need to really look at. Those are the ones that are supposed to irritate your immune system into action that makes it work better. And so here we have a test that came out regarding an adjuvant. Behavioral abnormalities in female mice following administration of aluminum adjuvants and the human papillomavirus HPV vaccine Gardasil. So you don't say, okay, so the HPV virus is the vaccine's garbage, no good. No, you start getting the proof by citing to other people. You need to read this report. You need to understand what's going on. And my interest in this was while you're standing there injecting these rats and doing these tests, why'd you just do the females, given that they were going to go to the males as well, those without those reproductive organs. Oh, because you can pass it on. Well, it's not about that. It's just about a story. Same story, same wrong story applied everywhere. But here you are. If the adjuvants was what I was talking about last week. I said better do a check. Somehow I got this. I don't remember where I apologize for whoever I got this from. But here it is. We can just read it to you now. And I'll just read the first sentence. Vaccine adjuvants and vaccines may induce autoimmune and inflammatory manifestations in susceptible individuals. So you can ignore it, or you can just spout off, oh yeah, they're no good, or you can understand the mechanism and be articulate in how you produce this point and then move it on to the next. Because once you find that this is the study shows that there's a problem here, and the limitations, don't speak outside of limitations here, because that's what the so-called the adjective science will attack you on when you step outside of it. Stay within it. You don't have to go far, but then it brings up the question on all the others that haven't been checked. And now you go to your data sheet again and say, oh, that's what they must be talking about here, that it may cause death. It may cause cancer. It may cause whatever. Guillain-Barre's, whatever. I really don't get into it. If I wanted to find the information, it's within a fingertip control anymore. And that's why I guess I get frustrated with some of y'all. We have the information to pull together to really be a formidable force against this nonsense, and we don't. We don't. Not even for our things that we're interested in. And they go through an interesting discussion in this link that I'll give you in the Blogcaster. Just go through. You can read it. It's technical, but get your mind up in that area. Get your mind in the dialogue. Start being able to. You don't have to sound like a scientist, but at least use some of the terminology that's relevant to the very particular point you're after when you get to, like in this case, that adjuvants cause it. Now, they also show that the adjuvant and the vaccine may have an interactive problem, but that wasn't really the study. So, point is, there's evidence to show there's problems. And I was saying I've said it, I say it all the time, the government allows the problems. The Clean Water Act was actually an act to pollute water so much. And then if you didn't quite get the cynical little point about that act, and if you don't tell them that you polluted whatever, you get penalized big time. But if you polluted a lot and you told them, there's no penalty at all. You learn how to speak if you haven't understood how that works. I know a lot of you will know about that. I feared for my life is one of those phrases of immunity. There's another one in the Clean Water Act. Oops, sorry, but here's the phone call. Here's the report. And now it's written off. So you look very carefully inside of all these laws, and there's, again, and if you got to kick back a little bit, there isn't perfection in the world regarding people. And so this is what that's supposed to do, but there's people that take advantage of that spread, if you will, of leeway. And, you know, they couch it in pretty indeterminate terms, like for minors it's undue and unnecessary degradation. What the heck are those mean? Well, there's a whole process behind that when you understand it, and it isn't what the agency says. In fact, I'll be moving on. I was talking to a federal defense attorney here, and she started throwing that out. I go, but you're missing. There's a whole due process. There's 2 due process procedural steps that you've missed to be able before you can even get to point that out. That's being ignored, and the courts are violating property owners because of it. And so I'm just advancing to you at some point. If you understand how this is really supposed to work, you really get in and not deny what you see out there and start embracing what's supposed to happen that's not. You're going to be sitting much more powerfully in your objection to it than someone who walks in and whines about the touchy-feely, warm and fuzzy stuff. So here's another test. The adjuvant, important. The aluminum adjuvant is causing problems. You can read for the extent. We were talking about the vaccines and this and that and other things and the problems and this year's flus, and particularly particularly troublesome is particularly for vaccines was a Jim Buff 33. This was near and dear to my heart because when I was 32, I had that sepsis condition I told you about killed me, but I survived it. I'm one of the only people I know that survived it. Went for 2.5 weeks and it kills people in 4. I've told you that story. Well, this is what this guy apparently has. It's not just about the vaccine that he got and the flu that he gets, but it's the complications that started to spring out from a healthy guy. Probably the prime, I think 33 or so, around that 30 to 36 is probably the prime of a male's life, I would suspect, in certain ways. Health, strength, awareness. You still don't have the wisdom, but you got an insight to it, and then you got the capability. And so in the prime of your life, you get struck down by something completely foreign to what you can deal with. A man is set to lose his fingers and toes today after a month-long battle with the flu. And Joey Smith, 33, folks, there's that magic number for those of you tracking that, was told he had 24 hours to live when he arrived at the ER in Dallas, Texas. That's not the flu, folks. That's this condition he got from this, and I believe it was pneumonia that he gets, and he's got a sepsis condition, so I believe, without knowing, I think he had the same problem that I got into many, many years ago, where he may have tried to sneeze or hold back a sneeze, tore the pleural sac where the bacterial problem where the manifesting the pneumonia was in his lung. That bacteria got into his blood system, and once that happens, you have about 4 days to live. And it's more serious than a heart attack. To take aspirin, you might survive that. So he had influenza with sepsis, pneumonia, and kidney failure. He's in late term here, folks, and he still survives it when they get him in. But because of the drugs they gave him, he loses circulation to his extremities. No different in a way that you can see doing for frostbite, as your body pulls blood into the core. Now he doesn't have blood in his fingers. They didn't do anything to try and induce blood flow to his extremities. I don't know, folks. I just think, why don't you just stick him in a vacuum, put his hands in a very strong vacuum, and then compress it, and then vacuum, and then compress, and get the tissue to start to try and move blood flow while that was going on, while he was under the worst of it. But okay, so the flu shot starts this thing. It induces a bunch of counter problems, which is not the flu now. He almost dies, but it's not going to, because of the flu and the starting of it and the weakening of a healthy body, he's going to lose fingers and toes. And lucky at that, folks, if I can just put it that way. So this is what you get to do with a government that allows the bottom line to override the profit. How many times I know, all of a sudden now, Bush's statement comes up that sometimes, a lot of times, if not every time, commercial interests trump peace. They're making war against you here, folks. So they still gave you medications, and they don't give you what they're supposed to in order to make war upon you, because the bottom line of what they do, they're telling you what I've been saying. They say it in different words. The bottom line trumps your peace. Well, they're not supposed to breach the peace. So we're in a facial violation right up front. I don't have to go far. I don't have to argue much. If you don't appreciate what I'm saying, you live in a war zone in your life. You are not living in peace, and whoever is imposing that is a facial crime. I don't care how you delineate, whether it's felony, whether it's treason, whether it's a war criminal, whatever, it's a crime against you. Everyone, too. So we sit back as crickets and we allow it. We're the accessories to the crime against us. And that said, we can only do so much. In fact, I've had a couple people, we're getting weary, folks. There's a lot of us that have been together, and we're having to talk to each other and say, I can't keep up this way. And we have to now reassess how we're going to continue to do the battle. There's not many people that quite understand, because everyone thinks they understand, so they fight you. Disregard reality, but that's okay. We know what we're doing, and they don't. So here's how they treat you, folks. And then we have another story coming up. An Aetna, quote, fake accounts level scandal was a question. Medical director admits he never reviewed medical records before denying care. Here was your death panel discussion, right, in one thing. This is the care they withhold without even reviewing your situation. This is, to me, just the method of the doctors that are just looking to provide you symptoms that they can give you pharmaceuticals to treat. Could care less about the side effects. Don't have an answer for that. But this is what they're going to do. There's people in positions already, if we didn't know it. Obama scare, Trump scare, I don't care what you call it. Remember, they're pulling back that care now to the tune of billions. Was it one? I don't remember the number. 1.35 billion. It's being pulled out of that system. How are you going to get the care they want? And then they start feeding you this box food because they don't let you get back up in the forest to drive a water truck to help the timber fallers to drop trees, to stick them back at the mill, let those guys and gals go to work, and then the trains and stuff that move the timber back out to build the houses people need. No, we don't want to do it that way. We want to give you a box of poison food that gives you cancer. And we're going to look next to our neighbor that receives that box and they got nothing else, and we're going to say, well, that's cool, they're getting to eat. And then you meet up this guy when you need some care, and he doesn't even look at your record. He just says, no. Denied. Just like we see in the courts all the time. Well, up until recently. No, we don't even get that. We don't even get a denial. They just can't. They can't get themselves up to make that obvious violation to actually put the denial. Why? Because we're speaking a lot better on the point. You don't get off on this stuff when you go far from what your point is on these things. This is the proof that the behind the scenes and the mutual death condition, underwriting all these medical things, there's people making decisions and they don't review records. They're the guys and the gals that get a phone call from the doctor who may have other thoughts, even as controlled as they might be, to want to give you the pharmaceuticals that they know will hurt you. And they'll tell you that if you get them in the right place, you phrase the point in the right time, they'll explain that this is a harm. That even contrary to what they might feel, this guy or this gal might be, don't care what he's saying. When the Obama phone gets rung about the care that you're going to give, that care will be denied. Big death stamp. And what kind of care, again, are they giving us? When they do give the care, what do? And this brought up the story of the week, I guess I can say. And really, I really didn't want to spend much time on it. In a way, it was kind of funny because my mind wasn't even into this thing. And it shocked me to realize that when I started to see some players, I said, looks like I've seen those people before, and realized I was absent the thought. I was actually looking at this event, this incident, really neutral without any thought about where the originated, just thinking about it in reality, that it was a real thing, and it still could be a real thing. That I realized that the word hoax hadn't come in my mind, but I'm looking at people that I thought I saw in other videos in prior events. And we're talking about the school shooting in Florida. Now, the big news, but again, I'm looking at telltale signs for other things as well. And something comes up pretty quickly. It seemed to be made invisible the whole entire time until now, until just recently it's been now creeping out as a suggestion of the family. From Prozac to Parkland, are psychotic drugs causing mass shootings, was the question right after the killings that happened in Florida. And I'm not going to get into, did it not hoax, no, false flags, real people die in false flags. I don't know what this was. I do know that it's repetitive, it has its own thing, and if you look past all this noise, you start to see a pattern of something that's being covered over, and it ends up being the government bottom line, and the whole system of that's been pointed out by this article, could these pharmaceuticals be the cause? And I want to point out with what I saw, I think you can see a direct path in the what was going on in the news relative to this question, how the system closes ranks, and however it's come about, protects that whole entire question from scrutiny or the development of evidence to examine the actual point, and this becomes the massive injustice to the one who is affected and does do the killing. Because in most countries, let me offer that there's this thing called the insanity defense. Now they have a different name for it, but the point is there's an insanity defense, and if those are causing that, then guess what happens later? But let me read some of this. I won't even read it. I just point out the headline tells us that we are looking at something. It's not guns. It's another cause. The guns are the tool of the destruction. It could be really anything, but these seem to be the focus, and it also seems to be the agenda. Remember, the Bar Association agrees with an organization in New York who's in the plaza, is in the middle of the plaza is a pistol with a knot tied in the barrel, and it's an international foreigner sitting on our soil called the United Nations that doesn't want arms because they know that the tyranny. It's the Second Amendment is the final answer. And you better not make you better not make a mistake at that point. Otherwise there is none. There's nothing left. You make that mistake once to disregard that. It's like I keep telling you, it's not what you're going to resort to. Hopefully we're going to go there before, because we're a lot more intelligent than what they've actually figured us out, and we've gone beyond what they've done to us. These chemicals, are they causing these psychotic drugs? Are they causing mass shootings? Well, I think that's a very good question in light of what happened over the course of this really quick shooting and then so-called hearing and trial, where I don't know if anybody heard it, but I was questioning the so-called defense team. It was really just a setup in my mind, but here it is. Public defender, or the next story, was actually the first story that came out before the Prozac story, but I want to go backwards from what government will sanction onto you that could cause a harm, and then cover over the evidence of that harm. And see that you understand, if they did uncover that and they showed that there was actually the drugs inducing psychological problem, that would then express itself all over the country on all the people that get these high value extractions through these government systems sanctioned by the government. The public defender puts arm around Florida gunman in court. It was an article out of the Daily Mail. I found this story very telling. This story came out the very next morning, and it was chock full of condemnation on the kid who did who allegedly did the shooting. There is evidence. There's some evidence, at least by statement of a girl, she heard someone else shooting as well. Not going to get into all that. I want to go after how you're mistreated by the legal system and how this stuff flies underneath the radar of anybody who's not paying attention. Or if you get into the divisive action of this, well, we got to ban guns now, and the guy to be crucified, and how can the attorney defend him and all that? Well, the attorney doesn't defend him here, at least to my knowledge, and did nothing in the system protected him to set this thing up, which would cover over the more important problem. But a cowering, as you understand, this is it had to be a propaganda piece to get people into supporting what was going down and accepting this next point. A cowering Nicholas Cruz is who the shooter was alleged to be, was comforted by his public defender as he was ordered held without bail during his first court appearance on Thursday in connection with the deadly shooting in Parkland, Florida high school on Wednesday that left 17 dead and 14 injured. What's interesting about this is there's been some Google searches that 2 days or so before this shooting, there was news articles with dates that were saying that there was going to be 20 students dead on a shooting that hadn't happened yet. So we apparently, because the media was prepared to do the report, they saved 3 lives after the fact. He kept his eyes down and didn't speak in court other than to confirm his name with a polite yes ma'am to the judge. Standing next to him was the public defender, Melissa McNeil, who comforted him by putting a hand around his shoulder. I understand this is a site, this kid's been adopted, they're setting up a psychological harm problem, a family problem, a multiple home problem with this to try and show that there's an underlying problem that's not what these drugs are. It's just who this kid is now. And the motherly attorney's going to put her arm around him. That's his defense. After hearing the Cruz's defense team revealed that he was on suicide watch and that he understood the magnitude of his actions. Now, I read that and I said, well, how is that a defense team when they just took away his ability to use an insanity defense? Or at least they highly diminished the fact by them saying that he understood the magnitude of his actions. This is a setup for the takedown. They've taken away his ability to even get on the ability he may have been interfered with by some government-certified pharmaceuticals that interfered with him and has caused this over time. And you'll start to read this in the stories, how they set this up. And this is the glaring omission that they try to cover by all this. They take away his insanity defense by saying he understands what's going on, he's remorseful, he understands what's happening to him, he understands what he did, he feels that he needs to, now just atone for his sin, apparently. In fact, he says he's sad, he's mournful, he's remorseful. He is fully aware of what is going on, and he's just a broken human being. It is not a defense team in a nation that recognizes insanity defenses. It's a setup for the takedown. You think this woman's protecting him, and she's just thrown him under the bus. Would I believe that that his insanity defense would be actually workable? I don't know. Now we're never going to find out. It can't be tested, can it? For sure. But do you understand that if he does go after an insanity defense, his penalty would be put for an indeterminate time committed in a mental institution, wouldn't it? Well, that time is determined by so-called specialists that would look at his psychological stability, and if it's found that the pharmaceuticals caused it and they pull him off, and over some time of years he shows that off of them he does okay, they get to release him, don't they? But then it proves the pharmaceuticals that the government sanctioned on him were the cause, and they stuck him there. So if you start looking at how this starts to work in the processing of this, it starts to me to tell a different story, and I hope you're seeing that. I mean, I hope you can start to work out how this has been really just it seems like a setup, and they're destroying aspects of justice. They're destroying the notion of justice by admitting into the problem that due process would allow to condemn him. And so we could read on and on this. I just wanted to point out the fact that she comes out with her words and already commits him into doing it and understanding, eliminating his defenses. Shackled and cowering in court, Florida high school shooter confesses. And this is a Zero Hedge story, and what was probably Cruz's last meal as a free man, now they start talking about all that's going on. I have a serious problem between this kid being out from the school and away for an hour, able to do all they said, and then they pick him up they haven't made a big connection yet at all. He's just found some time away, and they show now that there's this plausible thing that happened that's completely impossible to me, but the point ultimately is we can get involved with what happened, but they just took away his insanity defense, and they took away, once he gets into an insanity defense, they get to attack the drugs that he was on. And that goes into evidence that everybody can rely on. And so everybody closes ranks, and they keep him from doing that. And if he, and to me, I look at a kid that's in trouble, and I don't know what drugs he's on right now to be responding, cowering and all that stuff. That's indicative of another pharmaceutical. How is he supposed to respond in that regard? Anyway. We don't hear him saying that. We hear them saying that. The system. And so I just brought this out. They talk about how, beat down and shackled and all this, and they condemn him right in the public eye with all this news. And yet where they're taking away a critical defense strategy, again, I can't know that it's going to actually pan out for him, but they took it away. He can't use it now. That would get at this question. Are pharmaceuticals causing this? Well, they can't let that happen if their agenda is to stop your guns too, which creates more division anyway. So I made some observations on Twitter, memorialize them there, I suppose. Just ideas. Maybe I don't communicate them so well, and I read them back to you here, but I want you to hear them anyway. You can find them on my feed at Behind a Woodshed on Twitter. But on these points and questions, I said, and are those plea victims inadequately government defended with a government-caused insanity defense? If so, isn't it cruel and unusual punishment to commit them back into the very system which sanctioned their harm? What is proper medical health treatment if government caused? And I've asked for John Rappaport's response, and it hasn't been coming, and I don't really expect it, and it's not a slight to him. Maybe he's busy, but I would like to have a few minds who are always in on this and with some clarity to explain better how this is really justice at all. And I use the word sanction particularly here. The sanction is a double-edged sword word. It works. You can sanction something to prohibit it, or you sanction it to give it authority. And that I used both of those terms in that statement. So isn't it cruel and unusual punishment to commit them back into the very system which sanctioned their harm? He's sanctioned for doing the act, and he was okay for them to cause it upon him to do the act. The government sanctioned both sides of that. And I say that I want to remind you, the government works on both sides of the equation. This is a weird accounting sheet. I can just tell you that. So that's one observation I had about these government defenders that are now covering up what would be government-caused insanity defense. You see the government involved at all around this. There's no independent review of any of this. You need to look right past into that. You need to notice these are controllers. These are people that control this whole play, this sick play. And then John Rappaport comes out, and he comes out with, when people throw around the word broken, let's go to the source. Let's get a professional's opinion. He goes to the pharmaceutical thing, John Rappaport does. That's why I was interested to see what he thought about how this. He was focused on the doctors and stuff doing this, and I said, well, look at the so-called defense team throwing the client under the bus, under the color that they're taking care of him. This is a pretty integrated protection system. So I say, I comment back to John's position, right, John, and there appears a special intention to steer away from any type of insanity defense, as I pointed out yesterday, which would bring the entire matter into evidence. And I gave him 3 of my links from yesterday, and I have a hashtag #BarAssAccomplice. I wanted him to notice that there's not just the doctors and the cops and whoever else, that the Bar Association members are involved in this constraint of actual justice under the color of providing it. And I had some other links on YouTube that came through. It says they made a comment, he's fully aware of what he was doing. That was the defense, in quotes, the defense attorney statement. If you say that, then you take away this defense, and you'll never get to the reason why. They won't let it get out that he was underneath the influence of pharmaceuticals, because it's not relevant once he knew what was going on. He agrees, he waives his argument that he could have been under the influence by saying, notwithstanding whatever I was on, I knew exactly what I was doing. Takes away that question as to intent and knowing. The 2 things you need to do for doing a crime. And let me make this clear. I'm not trying to protect a murderer. But in this country, you're also, first of all, presumed innocent. Secondly, there is this defense that says if you're incapacitated, you can't be held to the knowledge of intent and knowing. If you're mentally or physically incapacitated by something or interfered with, that requires a different type of sentence and a different type of what's it called? The word is slipping my mind. It's rehabilitation. See, these prisons aren't supposed to be you're not supposed to be put there for punishment. They're supposed to be due to kind of give you the idea that was not a good idea. But within them are supposed to be the more altruistic purpose of rehabilitation. In a place of a mental incapacity, it's to try and find out what's causing it, and can we remove some of it. And to the extent it can be removed is the extent that one can be put back into society. What they call that the productive. And again, you human resource, the productive human, the productive citizen. And so this is the other question I had about this. Again, I've said it, that when they point out, they said it was a defense team. I asked the question, this is a crack defense team, ain't it? A rhetorical question. The quote was, after the hearing, Cruz's defense team revealed that he was on suicide watch and that he understood the magnitude of his actions. Then I say, and what is specifically missing with all MSM stories regarding the mental illness? You'll never see anything really talked about in any certain way that there was any problem more than he was had mentally problem, but they don't talk about it beyond that. And then they come at it, notwithstanding his mental illness, he understands the magnitude. That's throwing him under the bus. He has no defense. You might as well just put him on the prison side and throw away the key. He's never going to get help there either, is he? It wasn't mental, was it? No, he just becomes another piece of fodder to promote the whatever wanted to be promoted. I say in this email, in this Twitter, this is a setup case. From this evidence I'm seeing, this is a setup case. There's also an observation regarding the now we're down to number 2.5 mass shootings now in the schools every day in America. And I folks, I'm open to it, but I thought I did hear, and I asked the question, wasn't this predicted, I say planned actually, to be the fact that we would have a number of these every day, a number of these mass shootings happening all the time now? Wasn't that predicted in a number of years ago? And then I say this hashtag, this is a salute to social engineering. They've got us there, and they're saying 2.5. I understood it was going to be a little bit more and frequently than that. So let me get back quickly here to this setup case. The injustice within the system that you think is working it's what you all that have been involved with know how it doesn't work when you get a government defense attorney. And you laugh, I know. And then you say, well, how do you fight this? Well, there's lots of options. I can't talk to you if you're not open to it. So it doesn't matter between me and you and that. It doesn't matter. You can listen to what I'm saying, and you can change your perspective and understand the dynamic, and maybe we go after this another way. But hopefully you're not in the condition where you're set in a criminal context. And this is what I want to address right now, the setup for the takedown. These attorneys, as I'm pointing out to you, they will claim they're doing this in the best advice to their client. Still advice. He still has a decision to make. But how can he make that decision if he's underneath the weather because of a government-sanctioned pharmaceutical? Is the conundrum in my mind. In the minimum, I'm not making any judgment more than just to look at that problem. Is the problem that we just were invited to, the mining district, two of us were invited to go talk with a federal defense attorney over a miner that's been given federal criminal charges, felony charge for doing his mining. That is super serious. What came out of the defense attorney's mouth within 2 minutes, I don't think it was more than 2 minutes, was that their main concern at this point was to be able to strike a plea deal, to negotiate a plea deal, so that the miner would not be subjected to the felony. Let me remind you what they just did here. They just subjected this victim, Cruz, threw him under the bus, took away his insanity defense, because they're trying to get him off of what? Death row. If you don't read that into these stories, if you don't read, you're missing the whole setup. Now, not to get too much into what we were asked in this meeting on the specifics, the attorney would not, under the objection that she was completely looking out for her client and that I didn't care about the client, which you have to know I absolutely do. I shouldn't even have to say that to y'all. And I did. It's how we work. But she, underneath the authority that she was looking out for the client, would not entertain anything other than how to keep the plea deal open. Now, I'm going to pause here. I want you to think about this. This is where you get into those of you that read the words, this is where you get attorney. A torn, where all you're doing is you're going to allow the authority, however massively sovereign it seems to be, to have the prerogative to destroy you, and you'll take only what it gives you. And you'll take someone's property and torn that back into the government who has no authority to do what it's doing. And that's your primary focus as an attorney. And that's what I just walked into, and that was really fascinating to watch after reading this news things about Cruz. I saw the very same thing. Now, so that's what you're dealing with when you're getting these defense attorneys. They're focused on not shaking up the status quo. Everything I offered her as a legitimate remedy was not going to happen. Should tell you everything you need to know about what the system does. I want you to expand this over to the Bundys, to the Hammonds, to the 7 minors, to all those folks you see going to federal court. And I wanted to ask you something just to let you think about this. And this is how they do it to you. They don't do it to me because I don't they haven't done it to me because I don't let it, but because I know to look for it. And I don't have a system to protect in order to out it. Everything I was talking about would set the better record, would provide no ability for the prosecution to continue, and would attack the prosecution. Collateral attacks, as I keep telling you about. That was not going to happen in this case. It's all about protecting that plea bargain. Because if you insult that prosecutor, you're never going to get that back. Is what they hold over the client's head, and I'm looking out to protect you against that problem. Let me ask you something, though, folks. Under Title 18, those of you that read this stuff, and I keep asking you to go, you need to see the black and white. I don't care who you are. You need to go look at this stuff. Under Title 18, that's the criminal statutes of the federal government. Title 18, 1361. They go talk about all the little 5 problems that you can have when you on public land and hurt the fish and whatever all else. Folks, can you tell me the 1361 relevant to federal property, criminal actions on federal property? How is that relevant? And how can you force a minor to have federal criminal statutes applicable to federal property? How do you hold a minor who has private property to answer to those crimes? How do you take a federal criminal statute applicable to federal property and force a private property owner to answer to that? It's something they do not want to try and quash or set aside or attack or attack as a takings or anything. And what they're doing is they're applying federal laws, in this case that apply to federal property, onto a private property owner called a minor. And there is no spirit, mind, intention, or action, whatever, in the attorney to point that out. Is what's going on in the system to make you think that due process is going on, and the rest of you who were rendered by that machine, you saw the injustice and you just cry out, but you never analyze how they're doing it to you. And so no one else knows either that I come along, I want to tell you how they're doing it to you. It's the same, to me it's really simple. It's the same method over and over. It just takes on different characterization on how they do you. In this case, we have 2 attorneys by the same bar association whose only interest is to not make the system look bad and to torn a property owner out of his private property in preference to inapplicable federal statutes. These people would not hear at this time. Hopefully they'll change their mind when they finally start thinking about what we told them. We did offer some things. We'd offer some things, but I said, if you're not going to do this, okay, that's off the table. That pre-plea remedy is off the table. Okay, no collateral attack, that's off the table. How about this? No, that's not off the table. Okay, now you got me down to the jury. So before the jury, this is what here's what we have for you. And we explained to her how her client could win after he's now before a jury. If you can do it, present it correctly, and get an ignorant group of people to understand a very special law called the mining law that hardly anybody understands. We're not before a jury of your peers there. You're in front of an oppressive, ignorant commerce jury, not a jury of your producers' peers. But we explained, and again, not my opinion. We have a court case that we did this in, and we got the attorney to finally listen. She was a good attorney that way. She was actually the lawyer. She actually got in and asserted the law. And upon the assertion of the law, by the witness stand by the miner of his title to that property, showing the federal government has no property in these disposed lands, the jury saw his evidence, it's his location notice, and agreed and was able to discuss the fact then that the government had no title to the property they were imposing federal law, criminal laws on. So we explained all that. That got her interest. I said, but if you're willing to do all that, why aren't you willing to do the attack before you enter the plea that says the very same thing, but does it in law and doesn't need the jury to decide that? You don't have to educate the jury at all. The judge is now responsible to uphold the law. Why aren't you doing that up ahead? No, see, they want to keep this option over. So strictly all they want to do, keep the option that makes it look like they're protecting their client by throwing the client's law and defenses under the bus in preference to an ability to maintain a plea. Do you hear anything different than the Nicholas Cruz issue? I'd like to hear what it is if you do. They said right in the reports now they just wanted to avoid the death penalty, the death row, that's it. They wanted to give him whatever else they could. They didn't want to entertain insanity defense based on some pharmaceutical, that's for sure. But they want to keep the plea deal open. And that's why he's all remorseful, see, because it also allows them to do that, keep him off death row. It doesn't keep it wasn't a just defense, but it certainly makes the system good and protects the government's bottom line, don't you know? And so this is my correlation this week. Notes in the news directly can be attributed to things that we're doing during the week that are directly explaining the condition. That if you don't understand this, you will do all the wrong things about it. And because we're literally in this war, and I can tell you, I'm not criticizing the attorney at all. That's the game they learned to play. That's all they know. That she actually had she thought it was nonsense what was going on, thought it was kind of that she did not agree with the criminal justice system being a place of justice. Neither of the people that we talked to did. That didn't matter at some point either. They saw how ridiculous it was, but again, the attorney wanted to throw everything underneath a prerogative of an agency, which the agency had no authority to do. I said, every word you're using is consistent with an agency position that the miner hasn't been tested for with his defenses underneath a BLM hearing first, not a criminal hearing. You got to define you've got to find that the BLM shows that what he's doing is not mining, not how much he's mining, that he's not mining. And I don't hear any evidence that that's in fact the case. In fact, you've said that you exactly see that he's mining. So you want to talk about conditions and problems. You're wanting to make a negotiated plea without asserting before you have to plea. You want to make a plea deal instead of asserting before the plea that they haven't done everything that was needed to get him into court. If they can show that the court has jurisdiction over that state land, if you will. It's a state land inholding at that point, but not state land. It's that it's under state law. It's a state law inholding that the miner holds private. All these producers hold that way that's disposed of them. The Bundys hold the same way. The Hammonds hold the same way. How do you get terrorism charges that are within? I said, how do you charge a man, in this case a man, for doing what Congress granted him to do as a crime? How do you charge a crime, and how do you really expect him to answer to that? How can he answer to that? You ask him, the only question he has to get to answer is, were you doing it? He says yes, he's condemned. How is that justice? So I'm said all this just to show you, this is what I see throughout all these cases, the same. No one wants to listen to me. No attorney really wants to listen. And Vince, for all the effort you've had to try and tell the Bundys something, that's your reason. I should point it out to you as I thought about it. And it's all you. It's out in the real world, not between me and Vince. The reason why the attorneys don't listen is because it's outside the game plan of protecting the system, and it's a lot of work now because they've gotten so far off the rail. But it doesn't mean it's invalid, and what you're watching is a contempt for the law, actually. Contempt for actual defense. It's an evidence for the status quo corruption. The corruption extends beyond, again, the closed system that it is. I'll move on here. Hero citizen stops mass shooting in church. At the same time, it's what's Parkland going on in Florida. This citizen steps into a church. There's a mass shooting was going to go on, and he with a bunch of other people take this guy down that was going to round up 100 people in church. The guy who the churchgoer apparently grabbed the gun from the guy and pulled it out of his hands the moment that the cops show up, and they shoot this guy, the hero. Is the system. It's the closed system that we live in, of why you should understand that you need something more to do than to allow that kind of nonsense. Hero citizen stops mass shooting in church, cops show up and shoot him. Media silent. Is this continuing authority that goes on and on and on that people are completely oblivious to. I hope I've delineated something you may hopefully I've done it something you hadn't really paid attention to about this Florida shooting. Maybe as we can now expand it to how the judicial system does what they do to y'all. It's a formidable foe. And if you don't have an idea that this is all working out this way, you have no way to combat it. And this is what comes at you after the fact you've done it all wrong if you're not listening to me ahead of time, when the local bureau rat comes after you. But you go become a hero, and the cops will show up to take you out. That's an ongoing story. I won't show more. I'm just telling you, it doesn't matter what goes on. The government wins. The government is there to shoot you. The government is there to put you in their system and defeat you, and then keep its message going counter to what you really need to know. In my view, not knowing about seeing the obstruction of an insanity defense, and really do believe that those play a big part in that kid's response to the world, and that becomes evidence of a problem, and that we can't get at it, and we can't show a greater truth about these pharmaceuticals, notwithstanding their data sheet, is the crime. And you're watching the government cover it up. You're watching all the parties these are all government people covering this up right in front of you. And you complain about the fact you don't hear about this problem, or you conjecture about the potential cause, but you're not arguing that they've interfered. They've obstructed justice. And this is how they did it, in order to cover that problem. And that then gives them license to go on and use other things which divide us even more, like the gun issue. I was really surprised. I'm not really out of touch a lot of play. I look on Twitter. I found some people that were sending lots of streams of information from Parkland, so I jumped on those just to keep tabs. I was able to see quite a few videos that were coming out that I wouldn't have seen, just to see what was this thing. And then right after, the wave of anti-gun, the gun was the cause, and watching the reasoning, which was no reasoning at all, has no reflection in law, has no reflection in reality. And I understand the feeling and I understand the shock and all that, and wanting to stop what you think is the problem. But there's a societal absence about the Second Amendment that is absolutely scary, stunning and scary, that came out right after that. And I don't even care about the gun control. There's an internal ignorance in our society of many that these people that you're watching control this kid they're telling you how they do it to you if you watch what they're doing to this kid. And I'll have to say it again. I'm not saying I am saying it. He's presumed, we can't now because he said. They're saying that he said, if you notice really carefully. They put innocent, that he confesses in quotes. They're saying that he said that he'd done it. Remember that trick too. But he is presumed innocent. And so at that point, I want to see justice. If he done it, he done it. If they can tie him to the high school, they can tie him to high school. I don't have more thought about it. But when you come in as a defense team, so-called, and you throw people under the bus, or when I was talking to one not a 3 foot from me, so trying to discuss a very serious problem for the mining community generally as well, that the government will not assert the law or the remedies of the law up front, but will work to save the status quo. I'm looking at a systemic problem that's universal. And it's no matter if it's on the West Coast or back over on the East Coast in Florida, it's the same, folks. And you better get a handle on it. Not that it's the corruption. It's how they're doing that. The underlying techniques they do to make it look like they're doing something. It's the color of authority that causes that felony when they're not actually doing this. If you can start putting this together, wherever you address this when you see it, you don't do it when it's not applicable. Everything in its place. But when you see this, you can go right at this and get it hit hard in a place they can't survive it. And we may, over time, in a short time, I think, instead of fighting amongst ourselves over the whatever, the guns, the color of this, whoever done it, whatever, we get past that nonsense that they want to inflame in us, we will start to get more to what we need to see. I don't want this kid going off a tangent, but I would rather not. I don't want to see this kid getting hurt if he's been a victim of the government. Government was never supposed to play this part, and it is. That's should be self-evident to us. So what do they do here? We discover, here we got, they'll sanction pharmaceuticals that let you kill other people. They'll kill you when you save other people. The bottom line is the government's a death machine. And how do they tell us? A little story came up, and we got a little side shoot, maybe a little bit lighter here. Maybe not so much what I observed, but it sure hit me strong when I was seeing it. A little story that all comes out. It doesn't matter what you do. Eventually, there's a company or some government partnership that comes together that ends up fulfilling the needs of the government to do its policies, however you think about them. Population control is one. The one that there's a movie out talks about what they'll do when there's too many of us. Here's a story that pops up this week. Boarding now for a flight from Tokyo to Paris that never takes off was a story. A totally different story, but this caused a thought in my mind. Fasten your seatbelts. A flight departing to Paris and never leave the ground. That's exactly what 12 passengers did at First Airlines in central Tokyo this week, and where they relaxed in first and business class seats, where they served 4-course dinners before immersing themselves in a 360-degree virtual reality tour of the city's lights and sights. Quote, a real trip is a hassle to prepare for and expensive and takes time, so I think it's good that we can enjoy all this hassle-free, says Takeshi Sakano, 39. Prime age here for this, folks. Who was on the first VR trip, adding that he wanted to travel, quote, travel, like the cruise confessed, travel, in quotes, to Rome next time. At 6,600 yen, a fraction of the cost of an actual trip overseas, it's easy to see why First Air's 2-hour flights, in quotes, to Paris, Rome, and Hawaii, and New York have been fully booked since the company opened in 2016. Can I remind you of the movie Soylent Green? Can I suggest this is the beginning? This is Theater 11. In the quote, we're hearing it. We have lots of elderly customers who want to go overseas but are not able to easily given their physical limitations. Sounded like Theater 11 to me in the Soylent Green movie. I don't know, folks. It just slapped me right there. Okay, maybe I'm pushing it, but I don't think so. I don't think it's too far a stretch. You're seeing the beginning of the acclamation of this idea. You get to go travel somewhere at your final decision, and pretty soon they're going to have you all psyched up because of what they sanctioned, the pharmaceuticals they sanctioned, the stuff they feed you in your box food. When you get too old and you can't feed for yourself, they start handing you the stuff, and pretty soon you're looking to do the society good. You're going to go to your Theater 11, and they're going to have a VR trip for you. But remember, guarantee that it's 20 minutes. Guarantee you get your full 20 minutes, folks. At the age of 39. How are you going to pay for that, folks? 6,600 yen is about I think it's about $60 or so. If I had the calculator quite right a few days ago. No chance, you can pay with cryptocurrency. No chance of cryptocurrencies replacing fiat money, says J.P. Morgan. Why these stories come together, it just fascinates me. Maybe why I see them this way, I don't know. Maybe as much a fascination as possibly, I don't know. But no chance that you're going to use a cryptocurrency apparently to pay for that trip to beyond, folks. This stuff is just so funny. Are you getting it, folks? They're just setting you up everywhere, and you do it. You do it, and you allow it. So J.P. Morgan comes out and says no cryptocurrencies. Virtual coins fail to meet the major criteria. And at some point, they're telling you something here as well that is what they know you should be doing, that you may or may not know you shouldn't, and they're going to promote it anyway and get it right past you. But here's the standard for what they actually know in the system about what a currency should be. A virtual currency failed to meet the major criteria of currency, according to J.P. Morgan Chase, which has called them a bad store of value and a bad form of money. Take that to the bank, folks. But think about what does, as they start speaking about what is an actually good so-called money, specie, not the currency they make, the specie. It may make sense for some investors to include digital currencies in their portfolios as a hedge, the bank said in a wide-ranging note to clients. The bank added, however, that it doesn't view any cryptocurrencies as, quote, a legitimate competitor to sovereign currencies. Wow, pretty big statements there. Okay, so go through and read. You get the link on this or find this and read it, what they understand the currency ought to be, and realize the fiat they hand you doesn't even meet this. I've told you they're going to blend it at some point. He's denying it. This is the guy. Isn't this the guy that came out and said that Bitcoin was a fraud as well? Was it Diamond or somebody where they said that? That's all talk. And you know why I know that's all talk? Because they've told us before it's going to be all talk when they're going to integrate all this. And here we have it in the same week that J.P. Morgan comes out and says it can't be a legitimate competitor. Litecoin skyrockets thanks to deal with Visa. There's your connection about the problems, and they're going to fix it, folks. They're going to bring you into this condition and system. If it was neutral, I could care less. It'd be great, but it's not. They're doing it for a reason. Litecoin, one of the most popular cryptocurrencies on the market, gained 36% overnight, making it the fifth most capitalized cryptocurrency in the world. Well, I thought there was no value of J.P. Morgan, but here we go. Same week, J.P. Morgan says, poo-poo that. We're gonna have Visa come along, and we're gonna go ahead and capitalize that thing, and we're gonna start using it. Do I need to really read more? They're already feeding into this unsubstantial condition. While J.P. Morgan is telling you don't do it unless it's just a little bit of a hedge. How can it really be a hedge if it's volatile? So there's a lot of mixed signals, but the main thing is don't listen to what they say, folks. What does the Libra Code tell me if I didn't know more? If I didn't hear it anywhere else? You knows them when you sees them. You know them by their deed indeed. And so while J.P. Morgan's yakking and talking, Litecoin is joining up with Visa, or the other way around, I should say, and this is going to legitimize this thing. And at some point, I think that's fine, but that's not its real purpose either. Fourth, and then you find out, so now the government's in, I remember Visa and corporations and stuff, they're all in on the backside of this. They're all in it for the bottom line, folks, is the whole point, and they're going to do it by exploiting you in whatever way they can. If that's a VR trip to Rome or your VR trip to the bank, it don't matter. They're going to get their cut from you willingly. And then we read this, the more than 4,000 government websites infected with covert cryptocurrency miner. The rise of cryptocurrency mining software like CoinHive has been a decidedly double-edged sword. Well, there's lots of those this last few weeks I've been talking about, and they pop up everywhere now, folks. I must be one of leaders of the vocabulary, I suppose. Here it is. It's a double-edged sword. Well, I say grab the handle if you can, or get away from it. While many websites have begun exploring cryptocurrency mining as a way to generate some additional revenue, several have run into problems if they fail to warn visitors that their CPU cycles are being co-opted in such a fashion. That has resulted in numerous websites like Pirate Bay being forced to back away from the software after the poor implementation and zero transparency resulted in the frustrated users who say that the software gobbled up 85% of their available CPU processing power without their knowledge or consent. And I say that was wrong. It was absolute transparency. Nobody saw it, and that's what they got ticked off about it. They couldn't see that that's what was being caused, and that's what they didn't consent to. So these people don't understand what the word transparency actually mean. But here it is. I think I got onto one the other day. I got onto the site, and all of a sudden my CPUs went way the heck up, and it took a little while to get disconnected from that website. But, and that was on the browser. I don't have there's a little program you can get. I think it's called NoCoin. Make sure you get the right one. It says it, and I haven't had it on the other browsers. It says it'll block the attachment of those things from the websites. I think it's called NoCoin. It's a thing, a plugin for your browser. The one browser I have that isn't accessible to the plugin, I think I may have went to a website that had one of these things, and boy, they really do start sucking up the power, and it makes it hard for you to do anything else, which may be a good thing, because then you start finding out that it's there. But here's the point. Government websites are being infected. They can't even and I say I wonder whether or not they're being infected unknowingly or willingly, because as we see Venezuela will steal all your equipment and start up their own farms. Again, this is going to be this is how they're going to expand the economy, so-called. See, it's not going to be made to interrupt. All the libertines want to expel. We're going to interfere with the currency money generation. No. This is a way for them to unlawfully expand the currency and make it look like everybody's rich. And in fact, you're diluting the entire the entire population. But here's the 4,000 government websites are infected by covert crypto mining. So there's interesting things going on. The governments are involved. They let it or don't, or they allow it. The point is that these digital currencies, this virtual reality, this trip to Rome is yours to plug into and accept. And do it by the time you're 39. In fact, as I just said that, remember I told you were elderly at 46? I told you that was in a story years and years ago. I talked about the elderly woman who was 46 years old. I said, well, there's your definition of elderly. And I think it was either on Freaker's Ball, or maybe it was on, and I don't remember, maybe it was on Grammy Mary show, or Dork Table on Saturday. They said that they did come up with the idea that the elderly are at 39. Or maybe 36. So don't think this is a joke. It's a joke until you're that age and you have to make that decision. Understand, you heard it here behind the woodshed. If no one wants to connect it together, I'm telling you it's there to connect together. And you better take it serious, for as lunatic as it sounds. Lunatic is another parasite, so be careful. And the lunatic may have been pharmaceutically induced in you. And it's going to be in your food box here soon as well. Congress introduces new set of bills to limit the right to seek justice against major corporations. I don't know what to tell you. It makes sense to me, since that's what they're protecting. Everywhere is their bottom line. So, again, it's evidence in that the Congress don't care about you. There's no executive power, no judicial power going to be protecting you. Congress introduced a new set of rules to limit the right to seek justice against major corporations. The court system provides a way for citizens to ensure that their rights are upheld when a corporate interest or profit engage in exploitive and destructive activities. Is that true, folks? That opening statement's completely wrong versus when you go into Title 50. But anyway, that's the delusion, right? It's a way to level the playing field and ensure that they are held accountable, that everyone's rights remain intact is a myth. But that's what we believe, because we're a deluded population. And anybody who actually rolls up their sleeves and start to get involved, and when you start to be able to advance in that terrain, will then be helpful. Otherwise, everyone's just going to whine about it. However, the new political atmosphere, see, they think it's a new political atmosphere. But here's the new political atmosphere currently in play in legislative circles. Many major corporations are circling Congress like a bunch of vultures, like every other lobbyist looking to make a profit to you, getting a special law to exploit against you. Congress has countenanced a large number of bills over the course of the past year that deal with the deregulating, I'll get that right, industry, either by removing regulations entirely or else knocking out their teeth. Now, we go through that. Some of that deregulation has to happen. Some of this is federal overreach. Remember, it's all going to be in commerce, so there's not much of an argument beyond that it says that they can go and do this. And this is, again, about the bottom line. There's a bill which passed last fall repealed the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau's regulation that prevents banks, lenders, and other corporations from driving aggrieved consumers into an arbitration process and effectively prevents federal-level class action lawsuits against banks, predatory lenders, and others. So, again, inside job, you don't need to go for it. You keep plugging in. That's what you're plugging into. You write a phone contract, you go to the arbitration, and you go to these private bar-driven systems as well. I can go on and read all this stuff. You need to read it for yourself. If you're not interested and I'm wasting your time both times, I just want to point out that Congress sits there to tell you that it's going to provide no protection to you. It's not going to allow really the level playing field. And as I read that article, I'm seeing other things that you can do. So it depends. I don't want to get into it because if you're not willing to walk with me a bit down the path, you want to fight with me or just to think it's not pertaining to you, I'm wasting your time twice. And what I say won't matter anyway. And so part of me has to sit back and wait for those to come to the point where they have to ask a question. And then I'm here with an answer for those of us that are doing this and or the subject matter that I think I find is within my skill set. So Congress is part of the problem. We understand the government doesn't like competition. And when this little report pops out, all this stuff comes out together just to let us know. It's really, in a way, it's funny. I mean, if it wasn't killing people, I guess it'd be really hilarious. But understand how this works throughout the world. And this has been a study now that was done that the world's worst money launderers are the UK, Switzerland, and the United States. Well, wait, was that a surprise, folks? But here we are. UK, Switzerland, and United States are the worst money launderers. Okay, so we can say that. Oh, do you know how to prove it? Well, it just so happens behind the woodshed we've been working on how to expose that. And I can't go more into it than to tell you we do have a statutory rule set, a matter of law perfection again in an equity jurisdiction that we proved that these court systems and statement in how we showed the evidence of how they run their money through your court system. And it's not in the there's that system, that the corporate system of pooling the tickets. We didn't need to go that direction. We strictly did it out of the act of their acts, contrary to law. We pointed out they have no duty inside it to show that the courts are money laundering systems. A lawsuit went in a few weeks ago. It's going on, maybe just going on to 4 weeks now. It's in default, folks. People don't answer. These are state officials that are protected by the state who won't answer, folks. This is what I'm telling you about when you start getting on point. And so we're still not finalized on that. That's still ongoing within the rules of due process that you'll find Federal Rules of Civil Procedure tell you all about it. I don't make any of that stuff up. We just go through what the rules say. We just qualify the rule and move it on through. We'll move it on through because the rule is a matter of law, fact of what happens, and they're binding. Why would I want to do anything else? We now have, I can tell you, this chart is correct. Now, the world's worst money launderers are the UK, Switzerland, the United States. The whole and the entirety of the court system is a big money laundering condition. It's a big human trafficking system. I've told you this weeks and weeks and weeks, months, years ago. This is not opinion, folks. You might think it is. Maybe I don't back it up quite so much like you want to hear, but I want you to go find that fact of it out. Those of you that have been involved in the system should have been the first to be able to call it out. Why haven't you? Instead of arguing with me. You know it's there. Listen, I watch people here and there occasionally. I'm astounded at what you know. And yet you never put it into practice quite right. I'm astounded and I'm disappointed all at the same time. Wow, if you could just put that together. you'd have something there, not just you're attacking me, or you not just throwing your hands up. And as I say that, it was a thought a long time back. I noticed I went in on a website chat, and I noticed a comment that said that I lost somebody. I can't remember now who it was. I'm sorry. In the way I talk or the way I presented something, somehow I've lost the subject matter, the point. And I'm not asking for the feedback unless you need to, but if I ever do that, I need really to hear back on the point that I lost you on, and I need to be able to analyze whether or not I kind of went astray myself and didn't get back, or whether I didn't make a point better, that I need to start doing that for y'all, that you don't lose the point. I'm not here just to make noise. I'm here to try and get you to understand principles that are workable, not to sound like I'm so got so many things going on that I just confuse everybody. That's not what I'm here for. And so I was interested to see it, and I thank you for that internal comment to the chat. And I'm glad I went through it. I happened to offhandedly went in. I was looking for somebody, and I forgot to mention this then. If I'm saying stuff that gets you lost, if you can identify where what I started to say and where I got you lost, I need to look at that so I can tie my communication better together for you. Maybe I need to not segue quite so much. I tend to do that a little bit, but I do that because I want to show you there's so many things that are coming to play. Not only is it so much to catch your attention and get you off point, but those all could be avenues of attack when you go in to stop that thing. All the things at play are all the subject matter areas of points and data points you have to include in your interpretation of any strategy or tactic you develop. And so I kind of do it that way. I haven't said that before to clarify it, but anybody that I've been talking, and if you wish to send me a markonthebeast@yahoo.com, email markonthebeast@yahoo.com. Don't have to get wordy. Don't have to just say, you were talking about this. I lost you right here. And I can maybe see about working that out with any of you on that. And so, if not, I keep going the way I'm going because I have no feedback necessarily on it. And I do thank all the people that put in comments in the YouTube and stuff about telling me that solid broadcast and all. That's great. I just want to make sure that you hear it and start to actually apply this. Is really my main focus. Is you need to know it good enough to start actually putting it in practice. Whether that's in discussing more peacefully amongst people that are divided and bringing people together to understand better that we have an enemy, or whether you try it out and actually take on a responsibility on your own, because there's not many that will. That's the other problem. Former CIA chief admits U.S. meddling in foreign elections, quote, for their own good, should tell you everything you need to know about the United States government. Now I read it again. Former CIA chief admits U.S. meddling in foreign elections for their own good. Twitter came out and says, a guy named Bill Mitchell, just speaking broadly here, doesn't the U.S. interfere in the elections of other nations pretty much constantly? Don't we have entire agencies dedicated to spying, disrupting, infiltrating, etc.? And my response to that is, just other nations? You think that this guy's coming out to say, oh, we do it to them for their own good, like we have something to say about their lives, but you don't think they're turning it around on you? Certainly you know. The choir sings here. You know that they are. The point is that you have to watch and see, what are they doing? They're pointing out like they have the right, first of all, to do something they don't. That's the authority. That's a crime against another people. And they're willing to do it out there. I keep telling you. If they're willing to do it to someone else, they're willing to do it to you. You're just a human resource, and their interest is the bottom line. They just told you. Congress just said it. The legislative branch of that government told you that they are more willing to give protections to their monetary system and their corporations that support the bottom line than they are to you. People don't recognize that that's what's going on, or then they'll say, yeah, okay, we have no justice. You're not going to get this back by complaining. And if you think you're living in la-la land. So just other nations are going to do something for their own good? Do you think that box of food is going to be for your own good? I don't know why that became a focus, but it sure is. It's just a violation. It's just a, a big dismissal, big disrespect. And then from my perspective, you don't even need to go there if you're actually doing stuff that the law says you ought to do to bring the lands of the people's lands into production. And improving production, it says in the law. Not just, just a little bit of hedge trimming here and hedge trimming there, calling it logging. No. There's a way to manage the lands that's much healthier than we allow because of the so-called protecting the environment. That's a fraud. And when you go and produce, Mother Nature gives you all this and you tend to what she offers the best in improving, everybody starts to benefit better that gets in touch with it. And lots of people. It's the foundation of your society. They won't go there, but they'll go after trying to poison you, give you box food, whatever the heck it is, give you box pharmaceuticals, sanction this, sanction that, impose restrictions on your ability to get justice. You have to orient your mind into a different place, and then you're going to have to sit back and say, how am I existing in this place? How do I continue to allow it? And I would hope you would come up and say, where am I? That's where I want to get involved. That's where I'm going to drop in. We're going to fix that right here. Best I can. So what happens when the government does what the kind of attitudes is? We do it for their own good? What arrogance. What hubris. What nonsense. What criminal behavior this is. Psychopathy to the highest. Cockistocracy. How many more words are we going to bring up? Well, what happens when you start doing the world that way? Russia is taking over Syria's oil and gas. That's what happens. The better player ends up getting the advantage. And if you don't think that's a big deal in the news, what the Congress and the lack of real diplomacy in the world, the failure of this war idea that you go around beating on people because it's for their own good, where did these people get growed up that they didn't get taken behind the woodshed and said, you don't do that to people? Before they got into the places of power to make the decision. Russia is taking over Syria's oil. There's a big agreement that just came down. There is going to be some problems for Russia. They got to do some new infrastructure, a lot of investment, but they're doing it. So the United States, if it was attempting to try and be the good guy and bring, they tried to bring rule of law and democracy, didn't they? Now, what'd that get them? It didn't get them the oil contract and gas contract. You think Russia actually needs the oil and gas? Or do you think it needs to be working with people in order to bring its stuff up and back through these countries as well? Working with countries to mutual benefit, whatever they have decided for themselves. Does this attitude, we're going to do stuff that for your own good work, or does Russia work? And so, whatever we think about Russia or not, and whatever we think about how incapacitated they are, they won that point. And now, whether or not the United States is not going to attack that or whatever, however, get scammed, I don't know. The point is, you don't walk around the world and say, we know what's good for you, so here. Just like the blue box. Just like your pharmaceuticals. Just like your legal system. And we were supposed to be setting up and vigilant enough to stop any indiscretion by it, and we haven't. I guess that may be my main and only point. We have lost it. That's the cricket thing. We weren't supposed to be contented and feeling so nice that we scrape our little legs and make pleasant noise. Because we're under attack. There's a war against us. How can you possibly feel that you can sit content with this war against all of us? And it comes out and eventuates itself in the most obvious, like the killing at the school. I'm not claiming I know the cause. I'm saying that there's a system that looks like it's blocking the investigation of a cause that may be the real causation, which would put a whole new reflection on how we would address all these things. And that kid gets to go to a place for the rest of his life to be abused by the worst of everybody, instead of being put in a place that might give him help. Because guess what they have to do? All they have to do is start feeding him really good, and they have to give him a little bit of attention because of a deprivation on the social side, but they get to stop giving him pharmaceuticals. That was my question. How do you go to a sanctioned institution that will give you pharmaceuticals as a treatment to stop the problem that caused you to be the victim? Where do you go and actually to stop the cruel and unusual punishment inflicted upon you by the government in that system? We know better for you, and you lose the wealth here. And there's the evidence of it in the international specter about that whole point. Russia's been making friends. They've been trying to do their thing, and they're successful at it. Whatever my opinion, one way or the other, is, they are becoming successful at it. You watch what starts to happen there to interfere with that. You go, well, this is not good for you. We're going to stop that. What's good for you is we make the Kurds an autonomous state. They really don't care. That's not really the purpose. They're going to bring rule of law and democracy. That's the Bar Association under mob chaos, mob rule. That's all that they're putting everywhere. Why? Because a divided people is conquered. We've told that forever. Forever, folks. And why do you continue being divided amongst yourselves in the chats, against me, wherever, against anybody? Gun control, this and that's not even the point. Get off of it. Stop it. How would you like to be treated like that would be your defense team and throw you under the bus? And maybe you aren't under drugs so that you get to see the full real horror without the numbing qualities of a pharmaceutical. Figure that one out. So, moving into the problem of keeping track of all the victims and us plugging in and the currency systems and the virtual reality and our virtual reality that we choose to take the trip and don't leave the farm, folks. And we're not talking cannabis because they've outlined that because it probably works for those that you need it. See how that works? Take a trip and don't leave the farm was not about taking cannabis. It was about going to the little room with the VR glasses and watching the nice pretty pictures for 20 minutes. Your Theater 11. How do they do all that? Well, the virtual reality comes to you and you adopt it. And here's been the first test of doing that. Someone said that they actually wanted to investigate that, a journalist. The House That Spied on Me, very interesting story. That took an apartment. Her and her husband take an apartment. They took everything they possibly can. She bought all the stuff that tied her into the Internet of Things. Everything. Even the personal sex toy had this connection. The bed. The everything. Here's the bottom line of it. First of all, it sounds like a good idea like anything. Then she has a guy who's working with her who's a tech dude who's able to intercept all the signals coming out except the encrypted stuff. So just looking at the stuff that's coming from these machines, even when she was not home, he could start to develop how she lives her life, what she did, how her husband, how long they went and laid in the bed, when they brushed their teeth, when the coffee pot got turned on, all that stuff. Just like your smart meter would do if you don't have all the Internet of Things, but through different signatures. What she found out was that those machines end up ruling her life because they don't talk to each other so well. They have firmware problems. They don't have certain signals that they need to do it. They don't really serve you. They serve you up to those that are looking in, and you've given up all your rights of this privacy into this system that she could not. At the end, she was done with it, folks. And this is what I'm saying. Look ahead of this technology. This is the technocrats' dream of having all this done, and you're doing it to yourself. We allow the sanction of government to rule our lives, and we go all the way from the point of killing each other, being thrown under the bus for it, to being utilized as a long-distance beast of burden, extracting from you all the stuff that they would do as a human resource, and they get you to plug it in, and they keep monitor on that, so they know exactly what to send you. And at some point, you're going to go to your last trip and not leave the farm. You won't even have to tell them what color the room should be. You won't even have to tell them what pretty pictures you want. They'll know all about it. You're just going to walk into a room thinking like you're going to get a pizza or something. Maybe get your next Blue Apron box. Thank you for tuning in today. I hope something I said fired you up and astonished you enough to get, wow, we need something to do here, because I hope that's what we can do. Thank you, Grimner, for what you do. And thank you, everybody who donates to the reallibertymedia.com to keep it going. This is the only time we do this once a year. Jules at ucy.tv, thank you very much for what all you do. Same thing over there. Donate to keep these things going. And all of y'all that are supporting and promoting and helping the broadcast to get the word out. Absolutely, thank you very much for all that you do there. I'll be here next week, tech diffs or nature willing.
Well, that's another lesson. I hope with today's information you can take it to those that misbehave. From behind the woodshed, leaving his mark on the beast, this is Hal Anthony. Till next time, journey with purpose.
up a can of whoop-ass feels like.
Son, you just opened a whole case of whoop-ass.